For me, it was the key thing about the department. I would not have come here had it not been committed to developing a relationship so that the theory informed the practical work of the students, and so that the practical work of the students could enable them to be sceptical or critical or thoughtful about the theory they were getting. So it was this interface between theory and practice that seemed to me to be crucial to what the department's identity was.
As far as I remember, when Philip started as head of department after Keith Lucas retired, we were quite surprised that he had gone for the job, because he was head of education at the British Film Institute, which was quite a prestigious post. And it did make a huge difference, I think, in the way in which the department began to develop.
The radio equipment when I joined the department in 1990 was pretty old and out of date. A lot of it was built in very heavy steel cabinets, so it was very difficult to move or manhandle or to be mobile. But the department had spent quite a lot of money insofar as it had bought a completely new 32-channel Soundcraft mixer, and it had bought, I think, about 4 quarter-inch tape machines from a company called Atari. All that equipment was still in its boxes, and my first job on joining the department was to actually install it all.
The studio itself, or the room, as I rather dismissively called it, which was anything but soundproofed, was the big problem. How could you make radio programs if you got all this external noise coming in? Well, I discovered that there was a German company making what was called demountable studio system. It's bolted together in sections, and it was double-skinned and soundproofed. It wasn't perfectly soundproofed, but it was a huge improvement on what we'd got before.
I think it was about 92. Anglia TV were having a complete new dubbing suite put in, and I was talking to Dave Brackenbury, who was the manager in charge of the Anglia at Norwich, about what he was doing in the old one. And Anglia TV sold their old perfect home dubbing suite to us for £10,000 on the grounds that we went up and took it out.
Peckham.
Sounds a bit loud now.
When we'd had it agreed that we were going to move into Sessions House in preparation for the old building to be knocked down, albeit except for the TV studio and the lecture theatre, it struck bells in my mind, thinking, well, this is a one-off opportunity. This building will not be anymore after it's been moved out of. So I thought it was necessary to have some form of record of what it was like. So Steve Luxton and myself, Steve was the video technician at the time, he was a professional cameraman. We did a walk through the building and tried to get a flavour of the atmosphere. It wasn't a very particularly busy time that the building was in use, so unfortunately it didn't reflect sort of peak times, but at least it was an indication of how the building looked. It looked very tired, I think, when we photographed it. I think, to all intents and purposes, it looked as if it needed replacing.
During my time here, we were the last year to actually be in this building as it was before they knocked it down. We then moved over to the old Sessions House, which used to be the Magistrates' Court for Canterbury. And when we moved over there, it was still a courtroom. Our main lecture theatre was a courtroom with the big insignia on the wall and the judge's chair. And in fact, I remember Nick Burton giving us a lecture with him standing in the witness box. And it just looked so weird. Everybody else was sitting where the jury was and where the Queen's Counsel would be standing. And it was just a really strange atmosphere.
There was a real sense of togetherness at the old Sessions House. A real sense of intimacy. It was only RFTV students. It was us, our lecturers, this building, and lots of production kit. A real sense of community.
It was far from ideal, but I think it was the first time for me working within the department, still as a sessional at that point, that I got a sense that it was a department of colleagues and comrades So that although we were working in perhaps difficult situations in terms of our rooms and the spaces that we could occupy, that we were pulling in the same direction.
In the old sessions house, we had to be very creative with the space. For example, we used to have radio class, practical radio classes in the foyer, where Dick and Reed, our radio lecturer, would be teaching us how to edit quarter-inch tape. And while this is going on, there's people coming in and out and walking around, and you're trying to concentrate and get your work done. But, you know, one example of what we had to do, and we did it, and we had a really, really good time. And I think there's not one student who didn't enjoy it.
I think it was 1997 when the department moved back to the Powell building, the new building, which actually had some elements of the old building hidden amongst it, but basically it was a new build. They dug down under the ground and had a basement level with these BBC designed suites of rooms, and it was being very carefully planned and thought through. Any problem was, by the time we came back to it, the department had continued to grow, and so almost from the moment that we got there, it was beginning to feel a bit cramped and a bit small again, which is one of those things. And ever since then, we've been struggling to make the most of the space that we have.